transition of the elders to speak. Hello, my name is Shireen Munro. I'm a former pupil of Imhotep Saturday School. This month I'll be going to university to start a degree in biomedical sciences. Attending Imhotep Saturday School helped me to positively develop and grow to become more of a confident person. Being there allowed me to look upon the achievements of my ancestors and truly believe that I can successfully accomplish anything, any goal I desire to undertake. We need to know history, role models, truth and hope. We must endeavour to obtain these goals to pass them on to the next generation. Some of us have been miseducated. We need to re-educate to regenerate the power of the mind, its full potential of being undermined or even taken for granted. We must redefine in order to teach others. Be re-educated and dedicate some of your time to hearing the truth so you can move forward. God gave us our minds and inquisitiveness to learn correct information, not to stagnate it and abuse it with negative untruths, which have a certain tendency stopping us from achieving in life. We all have infinite possibilities. Re-education is the key. May I have the permission of the elders to speak? Imhotep Saturday School would like to welcome you to our first conference, The Education of the Black Parent. We thank you for coming from near and far and taking time out to join us here at our first international conference. This conference has been dedicated to Queen Mother Moore, Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Carter Woodson.
For those who are not acquainted with, as yet, with our processes as African people, I remind you that as Africans, before we do anything, even in the privacy of our most private places, we give thanks to the Creator and we call upon the ancestors to guide us. When the enemy sent his missionaries out to us, they managed to convince our people, or some of our people, that what we do is superstitious. And I find it striking and often disturbing and sometimes quite exasperating to find from among us those who are quite prepared to go into what they call church and kneel down in front of someone they call Father, who will then get the incense and the censer and swing it and get the water, holy water, and pour it, and then kneel down to eat somebody's flesh and drink somebody's blood. And that is fine. And yet, the idea of what is called an altar comes from Africa. From ancient times, we refer to it as a shrine. And we have shrines for various situations, occasions, and conditions. For example, within the village and wider community, you could have a shrine for the soil, for a god or goddess. You could have a shrine to the river. You could have a common shrine to which everyone goes to pray and make supplications. You also can have private shrines in your homes. And Tambiko, libation, is and can be poured individually or in groups. It is much, much more than it seems to the initiated who know. To the uninitiated, it's enough to say that this is a process by which we give thanks to the Creator for life, for all that we have. We then call on the ancestors to mediate. For in the African system, everything we do involves everyone. The living dead, and those who are yet unborn. And so we call on all to be a part of it, which is the African system.
Praise
Praise to you, Amen Ra, beneficent one, who by divine utterance and exceptional insight created all. Bless this gathering. Crown our efforts so that as we leave, we would have learned truly who we are and to follow in the footsteps of our ancestors. Bless all those who sacrificed so that we can be here. And bless all those who continue to sacrifice so we can go forward. Teach us to teach. In the process of our struggles against the enemy, I am reminded, particularly at this time, this conference, of our school, of all the children, our children, who stood up against the enemy. Those who were shot in the back, those who were mutilated, abused. I remember little Eric Peterson, who stood up against the guns of the Boers, the invading Boers, the barbarian Boers. I remember all the children, particularly in Azania and in all the other parts of the motherland. I recall all those junior elders, those senior elders. I recall the junior adults. I recall the senior adults. And as I call names, I wish you to respond. Tendai Umwari, Eric Peterson, Thomas Sankara, Samora Machel, Steve Biko. Great ancestors, surround this building and rid it of all negative vibrations, cleanse the inside and rid it of all negative vibrations, and instill in this our atmosphere, this day, a completely positive zone in which no negative can dwell or exist. I call on Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, I call on all our mothers, our foremothers, who were raped, abused, disused, misused. For we appreciate the sacrifices you made on our behalf. Strengthen us to continue till we win victory over the enemy. Praise to you, Ra. Bless this day.
The speaker I'm going to introduce today, I have to say I've never actually heard her speak as a lecture, but I had the opportunity of having a conversation with her yesterday in the dining room when I picked up some ice cream and basically got told about what I was putting into my body and why as a woman I should not be putting it into my body. Now, if you look on your programs, Dr. Jewel Pookrum has been described as a surgeon, gynecologist, holistic general practitioner, founder and director of the Civilized Medicine Institute, where clinical medicine and holistic practice combine. She's also an author of the best-selling book, Vitamins and Minerals from A to Z, and on it goes. But the most important thing that comes out is the fact that is the word holistic. She's got PhD and MD after her name, but that's just half the story. The fact of the matter is that when she learned one thing, when she studied up to a certain level in one way, I you could say the Western framework over here, she went and researched the other side of the story, the other side of the coin, to produce a whole picture. One of the things she mentioned yesterday in the dining room was that she'd been a doctor, a medical practitioner for a while, and then decided that she did not want to just be a link in the chain between the hospital and then the pharmacy and then the insurance company. In real terms, what medicine is about today in this society is pretty much about dealing with the disease and not the cause. It is not a holistic practice. And through her life, through her studying, after studying in the university for we all know how many years it takes to make a doctor, to get your MD, to get your PhD. Then on top of that, she went and spent an extra 6 years accumulating the knowledge, and she's still accumulating knowledge today to make her the holistic healer that she's supposed to be. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce Dr. Jewel Pookrum to, how should I say, fulfill her philosophy, which she is pledged here on this program, if you read it, which is to promote perfect health. As she says, perfect health is our birthright, a gift we already possess. I can help you discover it by supporting you mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. That's holistic. These proven holistic and medical techniques are designed specifically for each patient. Dr. Jewel Pookrum.
Great thanks and homage to our founder of the Imhotep Saturday School. I want to really thank him and his ideas for bringing the school forth, and it was one of the main motivators as to why I would come this far to speak. I also want to thank my teachers of yesterday, master teacher, Emmy, and Dr. McNamee. I just really enjoyed it when I get a chance to sit in the presence of other scholars and to learn, etc. I spend a lot of time by myself in my own world of studying Galactic evaluation and integration, so I can be with others and to hear their ideas. And to really always be bumped up and out, it's really an honor, and thank you. I want to thank you parents very much for being here, and as I've studied over the years, I wondered how and when this information could begin to be imparted to the parents so that the students would normally be born into a milieu, into an environment that would allow them to actualize their greatness. I do want you to understand who I am. I am an ancient Chemite that has returned to my presence to ensure that I concretize and immortalize my future. So I do want you to understand that I am an ancient Ankh carrier, that I received this very humbly in the presence of Segmet, which is the God essence of our vitality, where she still stands for over 5,000 years as a vow to always honor life. And when you take this vow to always honor life, that means that it is your destiny in this lifetime to master the illusion of death. There is no such thing, but that is for each and every one of you to eventually master. So let's start out kind of like on a story. You know, science has really been my heart, and I just love it because to me it's a language. And as Sister Mrs. Emmy has stated, I have studied all my life. I study every day. It's my commitment to actualize, again, my immortality. And I was quite dismayed and really very hurt to recognize that I had spent almost 10 years and paid, nearly $1 million for miseducation. So one of the great things about life is that change is mandatory, and that if you're going to master it, you have to get over it and move on. So I recognize that as I was now being asked to move forward, I had to take that experience as a real stepping board to recognize that I had a very intense and very expansive understanding of what was wrong and that I could never be misled back to that path again. So in recognizing and knowing quite well what's wrong, then you have a whole world available to you to really investigate the possibilities of what is. I had the opportunity in 1977 to make my first pilgrimage home to Egypt, which really is like a landing point as to where beings like myself actually seated ourselves here on this planet. And returning to that point of birth, literally, I got a chance to sit at the angle of the pyramid of Imhotep. And I think it's very profound that also deeply touched me that the school is actually named after an icon, after a model, after a symbol of what is being asked of us to remember as the prototype for how to resurrect ourselves. So sitting there and meditating with this icon, etc., took me many years to really integrate what this was. Of course, there's many books that actually give their rendition of what the pyramids represent, what they're about, what they were used for, etc. But for those who are really interested in actualizing their own genetic memory, it will ignite your own true memory as to what this edifice is and what it's about. For me, because I'm destined this lifetime to reestablish institutions that do resurrect health and that, as my mission statement has said, will guarantee that perfect health be actualized as your birthright, you have to have a template that comes from perfection relative to this dimension. And the icon of Imhotep, the step pyramid, is the foundation that actually shows us in a structural form how to build, so that we can actually realize that to build and concretize anything in this dimension occurs in stages. That's why it's been step form. It also shows the basic primordial geometric form that is necessary as a template to build upon it so that the foundation will not crush. So each one of those angles has a definite corresponding relationship to the directional force that it represents, also to the ley lines that it sits on. And when you look at this from a political, a social, civic reality, you're still asked to honor these energetics and these ley lines in whatever you build. So the school, just by its name, is standing on the proper foundation. And I hope that the students will go on and do the research to understand the geometry, the energetics of what the school name means, so that as each brick is laid for the foundation of the school, it truly will actualize its purpose. So with that, I do want to say that in my studies, I spend in U.S. dollars probably an average of about $100 to $150 a month on just collecting scientific data. And my dismay is that I never get a chance to really go through all these prints and periodicals. But if you were a parent, and I want to ask you that, so this is a new Fantangle machine that I'm excited about. That's great. I just have to do transparency. So if you were a parent, okay, and perhaps you would just breeze into a newsstand. As I travel around the world here, especially so much in the last few years, I recognize that I go through so many different airports that a lot of things that I'm exposed to, it never winds up in our communities. A lot of the literature that's available, et cetera, really, we don't glean unless we make a particular effort. So I don't know if you're able to have access to these, but I was divinely compelled to bring these and just let you see the things that have been unfolding. Now, I am a sci-fi buff because sci-fi to me is real. So it's just, again, another spark that activates my DNA for me to recall and stay focused and centered on what I'm about. So one of my favorite series, little mini-series and movies was Fly 1 and 2. Okay? And truly the issue around teleportation and genetic rearrangement, which actually deals with being able to move mass from one perception of one point in space and time to another, has been something that Egyptians have been doing for thousands of years. That's actually how we came to the planet. So I thought it was very interesting in looking at, again, the exteriorization of an internal innate trait and how difficulties of externalizing this capacity that's being realized. And Fly 1 and 2 is a very good example of some of the side effects that can occur from states of emotion. If you remember the movie, from neglect and the carelessness of the scientific method. But the key here that is very important is that this movie came out in the early 80s. Star Trek, constantly, most of the children are well aware that you should be able to, beam yourself up from one point to another. This is, quite common to them. But you as a parent, how do you feel about the fact that quantum teleportation basically is something that's been worked on for the last 20 years as an externalization and will be a new means of transport for those available who are willing to entrust their genetic code to someone else to move it from one point in space to another, because that's a big reality. So think about that. So I think it's just really, I thought it was just cute, like, okay, I was reading this the other day, and I just wanted to see what they have to say. They have now magazines, as you can see, that are printed now for physicians that do nothing to deal with sexuality and pregnancy. And as I subscribed to this for a couple of years, it's just been very interesting, the perceptions that they have about male-female sexuality and where it's going. It's quite sterile, okay, in that my colleagues still have a lot of difficulties in integrating the mental and emotional bodies in sexual activity, etc., and are not able to really deal with the ramifications of what this kind of energy merging, okay, can create. But again, we now have magazines to deal with all issues of this, and I think it's very interesting that this just came out in '98, and many of the medical covers still use very puritanical images, like this Elizabethan couple, okay, when they're talking about modern day issues. So, again, everything states what the intent is, okay, rather irrelevant as to whether the person is conscious of what they were doing or not. They really tell you what their real intention is. And this magazine is just continuously flanked with Elizabethan type of icons, etc. And so this is why, as I said, the magazine is quite sterile and not progressive at all in helping individuals, especially the patients, understand the dynamics and the potency of what sexuality is about. But again, these are issues that are being addressed, and what are you reading about that? What are you studying about that, etc.? Because if you're not thinking about it, these exemplifications are to let you know that other people are, and they're giving their opinions, and they are setting the standards. I thought this was a very interesting article that came out on the difference between boys and girls, and I think this kind of research and this kind of information is paramount for parents to understand what science is elucidating about your offspring. So we've learned a lot about the different neurologic developmental stages of males and females, the importance of hormonal influences in the development of what is perceived to be a female versus a male brain, but then actually set the tone for the electromagnetic impulses that bring about sexual attraction. There's a lot of theories that have been waged and still are very much underground as to the origin of sexual attractiveness in adulthood. But one of the things that is still very much suppressed, and I suspect within the next 5 years it finally will be announced that there's a serious problem in the alteration of the electromagnetic fields in males and females and the amount of artificial synthetic food an individual eats. So you have to understand that electromagnetic orientation is passed through vitality, through the life force. And the more food an individual eats that has lost its vital potency, the more dilute your electromagnetic orientation becomes. So we might want to look at that. We do know that definitely mothers who eat a highly synthetic diet have a much larger propensity to produce children that have ambiguous genitalia and a lot of other issues. And we're seeing that. So what I call devitalized food is primarily known to you as junk food, and it's quite dangerous when you're in the process of actually creating mass in this dimension. This is very interesting to me because it has a lot of things on it. But this men's sexual circuitry, okay, was the article as to why I bought this magazine, okay? Men's sexual circuitry. And it's very interesting and very potent article about what they found. In Atlanta, where I now reside, I was asked to give a lecture to the hepatitis C support group there. And I chose to do that because, as you may now know, it's alleged that supposedly if you have hepatitis C that it's a lethal disease, and that's something that you really can't heal from. However, when I was in medical school, that was one of the things that they touted, is that out of all the organs, the liver was the one that could regenerate, and that you could lose 80% of your liver function, but you could still live because the liver would regenerate. So I thought it was very interesting that all of a sudden now we have this organ, the only organ. They would basically, take your mouth and nail you in a closet if you said that brain tissue could regenerate or any other tissue, which we now know that they all can. But to now rescind the fact that liver tissue, which could always regenerate, can't, and that now they are telling people that for them to recover they have to have liver transplants, makes you think, what is really the issue here? Well, all tissue can regenerate, and the liver especially has always been able to regenerate. So why then having an infection of the liver now becomes lethal when this was the most prolific organ for regeneration? It was not, but like I understood in science, it's always important to have as many examples of a successful experiment to really make sure that you can sell it when it's time to actually introduce your product to the market. And so if we can do so many liver transplants, okay, in the face that you're now reprogrammed to think that your liver can't regenerate, then obviously we can use that as a jump-off point for marketing and a lot of other things, but move to the next level. So I recognize that the information was twisted in the presence of an emotionally heightened experience, like, am I facing death, that people were reprogrammed to think that this organ did not regenerate. It does. But there was a need in science to be able to become prolific in being able to move organs from one place to another. And this is a very good jump-off site to do that. So now the next venture is looking at men's sexuality. And as I said, I went there to speak to the hepatitis C support group and to tell them that their livers could regenerate. And in the termination of that lecture, I had to go to the bathroom. And so we stayed there quite a long time. It was a very nice building on the medical campus there, Brady Hospital facility. And they told me that the area that I normally would have been able to go to the bathroom in was closed, but I could go downstairs. So as I went downstairs, the entire building changed. It went from, a oak-walled library type environment to a dungeon. And I was quite sure that they sent me to the wrong place. It was like I went through a gateway at Pookrum. I just couldn't understand it. So the stairwell got real narrow, and then there were buckets of ladders on the floor and everything. So I was like, I don't think I need to go to the bathroom. However, I continued to descend the stairway. And as we tried to, in this very dark, dank, disorganized hallway that was supposed to, I guess, be the basement or some type of subterranean level, because there probably were levels below this. In this building, the gentleman that assisted me called my attention to this corner. And so he said, well, what's over here? When we got up there was this very thick steel door. It had a card entrance, security key, and also keypad security system. And so I was able to press my nose up against the glass and present very narrow glass to read what was on the bulletin board. It had a huge bulletin board that said that this was a national androgenetic study in prostate DNA from the African American male. So I thought that was real interesting, that it was cloaked down here, just like I said, in a basement, in a cellar, where they had it under double security, where it was very clear that any African male that rolled into this hospital most likely was going to be leaving without his prostate, because they were just doing the genetic location for androgens in the African American male. Okay, so I was like, So a lot of this research that we read about, believe it, is coming from your blood and your tissue as Africans. This is very interesting too, and if you're interested in copying these down, I think as parents you need to have these on board to start studying them. This is a really nice, wonderful expose, a fantastic voyage through the body. And a lot of the geometry and a lot of the art forms that I'm seeing expressed as furniture, lamps, kitchen icons, etc., are actually recreations of tissue structure. But because we don't really get a chance to look at our tissue through a microscope, because we really don't get a chance to see it from another perspective, we are not recognizing that we're sitting, feeding ourselves, drinking from ourselves, because these are all structures that actually exist in us. So this is a fantastic example to just show you how art form now is really, again, another expression of who we are. This is kind of an older one, that's why I said I had to buy a really huge database computer. This is a 97. A database computer to start scanning and putting stuff in. And that's, let me just tell you about that real quick. Be very leery of the internet, because the internet takes upon itself to actually reprogram your database of what is real and what isn't. It is actually now becoming the international world source for information. But the controllers of the internet are deciding what's going to be available to you and what isn't. And so if you're doing what I call advanced research and documentation, etc., we can't necessarily rely on the internet to have the information, which means that you have to have your own data collection system. And as I begin to actually build my ideas about tissue regeneration, etc., and the functioning of the African body, I have to keep my own data, because as soon as I'm accused that that's ridiculous and there's no research, if I'm relying on the internet to basically prove them wrong, I will look like a fool. Okay, so you have to understand that a lot of this will not be accessible. There are areas in the internet that basically you can't access. Okay, so if you are not beyond what they call the digital divide, and that's interesting. So if you don't have DSL lines, if you don't have digital access, the frequency that this information, etc., can be and will be stored on the internet, the average person won't have access to it. So it will actually look like just a blind wall to you when you try to access it. That's because the frequency of which it's coming from, you will not be able to hit with your machines. So you have to pay attention that they're already segmenting information, okay, based on frequency of how it's stored, etc. And if you don't have the technology to enter into those high frequencies, it's not going to be available to you, and you'll be held responsible for what you can access. Again, how the brain learns to talk, how the brain learns, etc., is extremely important for us to understand, because that tells us what our role is as parents, as to what we have to do to make sure that all segments of this brain is actualized. I want you to really bear with me today, and I really want you to deep read, because I'm going to give you a lot of data here that's very important. I do have this one particular lecture on the 8 circuits of the brain. I really call it 7 circuits of the brain. It's very difficult to talk about the 8th circuit because it's not tangible, it's not matter as you know it, so we just talked about 7 of them right now. But you have to understand neurologic development and neurologic function to understand what's being expected of you as parents. Just very quickly, let me see a few more. Since I was trained initially to deal with women, which means that we're dealing with all life forms, because as you know, the gateway to this dimension is feminine. And everything comes through that collective before it defines itself as being masculine, etc. It's very interesting looking at what they're saying. So this was very interesting, the studies that they're doing, looking at women, what rage is about, etc. Again, Scientific America, and it's been interesting. The last 6 months, this magazine totally has really devoted itself to the African. And this is a magazine that has never in its history had any need for anything that was melanated to be on any of its pages, for any commercials, for any scientific data, etc. But the last 2 magazines that have come out, one has been totally devoted to muscle. It has this beautiful specimen of the African American male, and it's devoted to muscle and genes. And they put him on the cover to let you know this is a prototype for which we are actually scrutinizing muscular development, etc., for the genetic pool. The article before that came out where they were looking at super athletes and genetic makeup. And all the athletes that they basically were indicating that they were researching on, they all were African American males and females. So it has continued to go on. This is the face of an African, so as we talk know, in the year 2000, I do a biotechnology lecture where every form of tissue that you can think of now can literally be made in a laboratory. And one of my greatest regrets goes out to the fact that women for so many decades were told how unimportant your uterus was and that it really wasn't any big thing and you could just have it taken out. Well, guess what? They have a market for you. You can now buy a uterus for $14,000 because they actually are growing them in tissue. So one of my magazines, they have a picture of the uteruses that they grow. And so therefore, for poor women, they claim they are born without a uterus, which is so rare. Okay, you do not go through all this trouble to basically grow a uterus that you will sew into, 1 in 700,000 women. No, they do not do that. That's bad marketing. Okay, it's bad investment. But now they are growing uteruses and they're selling it for $14,000. So if you want now to buy a uterus back, you have to pay for it. Again, body in the future, the new drugs that are available, the new foods, etc. It goes on and on and on and on. So I do want you to know, and I do want you to really look at and ask yourself, what do you do with your spare time as a parent? Okay, what is your real goal for your child? One of my concerns is that since Africans in America have been there for 400 years, we have still failed to recognize that there's some basic needs, or what I call first circuit awarenesses, that have to be completed for us and by us. And that is to provide for yourself a food to eat, a place to stay, to educate yourself and your children, and to create a means of being able to acquire whatever the agreed currency is to do that. And so being in America, Africans have been able to acquire all different types of positions, etc., to do in and everything. It was built literally by the African, but still in all, they're completely dependent on others to provide those 4 things for them: the education for their children and themselves, the food that they eat, the buildings that they live in, and the jobs that they have, which is really incredible when you think about it. Okay, we're going to talk about how an individual can be reared for hundreds of years and still miss understanding the basic things that they have to do for their own personal growth and development. Okay. Dr. Emmy talked about this when I came in yesterday. He was just talking about the science of self, okay? And this is extremely important, and this is the science that you want to spend the rest of your life studying. Once you know yourself, you know this dimension. So the study of and the application of the knowledge of who you know you are and what you know you have been created to be begins the venture of the science of self. So I always use this template for myself. Again, this is another icon of instruction. The Great Pyramids are another icon of instruction. Okay. Yeah, another icon of instruction. Again, so for those of us who have the genetic memory, that's real important to remember. I think Dr. Emmy talked about the amount of money that was being invested in to study the Aboriginal component in Australia. Well, the Aborigines are a gene pool of themselves because they have more chromosomes than all of the humans on the planet. So do not think that everybody has 42 chromosomes. That's not true. And the more chromosomes you have, it is a reflection of how much data you have on board about this dimension. So DNA, your chromosomes are actually a living library of your available history of what has happened in this dimension. Okay, so understand that. So from this icon, again, this icon is very powerful. But one of the things it does say, nothing can be built by an individual that lasts longer than he or she does unless others are willing to sustain it if that individual has not actualized his or her own immortality. You gotta understand that. See, this building says right here that the people who built it were immortal, because you cannot impart a quality to anything that you don't already have. Nobody took care of this except Mother Nature. So for it to still stand on its own without human beings helping it, as a matter of fact, they chiseled it to what it is, okay, says something about the quality of individuals that built this. But you have to understand that. The specimens that were taken from the mummies, they already know that the mummies were alive for thousands of years before they were mummified. So they don't tell you that. So you have to understand that there's been a real big shift in the growth patterns of human beings. And that has also been created because of this illusion that people play games with. It's very dangerous, known as time. So I'm going to talk about that just very superficially, but you got to learn how to tell time. And I'll just state to you in summary, there's only two times, nighttime and daytime. And if you're going to be on this planet for a long period of time, that can be the only time that you tell, because that determines your endocrine function. And if you reset and recalibrate your timing mechanism on a machine, you're going to have problems. Okay. So this is the gold rush. Okay. It's real important to understand that this is the gold rush. Okay. The genetic gene pool of the African is the gold rush, and this is the bottom line that actually sets the tone for what modern industry thinks that they're going to be making sextillions of dollars for the next century or so. It's known as genomics. And whoever has access to this gene pool has access to an unlimited resource of whatever they can create. From computers to tissues to all kinds of materials and substances in this dimension, because the human being is the totality of all creation here. So now, for those of you who can get to a sequoia tree or an oak tree, have a meditation with it, and it'll tell you. Because that's one of the things I got real clear and sealed about, because you can't tell me, and this talks about having to confront these religious beliefs, is that, you know, you can't tell me that we're made in the likeness of the Creator, and yet and still people are struggling to try to stay here on a day-to-day basis, let alone to 70 years old. But a sequoia tree can stand here for 3,200 years. I mean, see, there's a problem with that. So you have to basically ask what the deal is. Why can a sequoia tree be here for 3,200 years and you're struggling to stay here day to day? And again, because everything communicates, okay? The tree will tell you that it doesn't deny who it is. That's your big problem, you do. And so once you understand who you are and stand in that, then the attributes that you have as yourself actually will unfold. So let's just look at this. Now, this came from some work from Timothy Leary, and he and Lorenz and some other people were thrown in prison for this, so that this could actually stay underground about brain development, because the key is in your head. Okay, you have a brain that is to be developed completely, and in doing so, you will then actualize the traits of the X-Men and women, the Matrix, Lawnmower Man. All of these things are actually showing you that as you actualize these segments of your brain, these are the traits that are available to you. Being able to merge and walk through walls, etc., is nothing. You're supposed to do that. To be able to fly, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to be able to emit through your physical tissues any frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum, cosmic rays, radio waves. All these things are part of your makeup that you're supposed to have dominion over. So therefore, as our children now are coming with the capacity to interact in these higher frequencies, how are you going to deal with them? Now, I understand from a very scientific level why, especially in the United States, I don't know if this is going on here, why the rights of the parents were taken away from the children. Because space stations have already been built in outer space. We have been influenced heavily by alien, quote unquote, technology since the late 40s in America. A lot of the stuff that you're standing around in came from alien contribution. So therefore, you have to understand the children are the interface for this dimension with other dimensions that are already known. And so therefore, with you having unfortunately been used for war, research for chemistry, etc., have really retarded and jaded, it appears, your neurologic development. And as these children begin to express themselves and honor themselves in the best way they can understand based on their neurologic activity, it is quite threatening for most of you. And so therefore, banging on them, verbally abusing them, etc., sets them up where it shuts them down from their continued neurologic progress.
That can't be, because we know you can't handle the new environments in space. So therefore, we're relying on the children to be able to do this, and you cannot continue to traumatize them. Literally, that's what's been written. So there's many, many agendas going on. This is like a huge onion with all of these different onion peels, and the general public really is not even seeing through the skin. You know, the little dried up thin skin of how heavy this onion is as to what's going on and the plans that have been made for your children. Now you have to understand that what they are and what they're able to do now comes from you as the parent. But your growth and development has been arrested for many reasons. One of the things that I like about being human is that you can wake up anytime. Anytime. So understand that, you know, the story hasn't been told yet, but somebody has to basically shove you and give you a little jolt and ask you, do you want to wake up? Okay, but the children have a whole different level of entertainment that they're dealing with. You know, the X-Men reality, etc. Have you all seen that yet? Yeah, the X-Men reality, they look at that every day on the TV. I mean, so they're used to recognizing that we can generate energy, okay, that we basically can appear and disappear, that there are people from other dimensions, etc. And if you're still struggling with how you're going to pay the lights, okay, you're in two different worlds, okay? And you have to recognize that because of that, you can become very dangerous to a potential entity that is going to interface in this dimension. I'm telling you, it's serious. So let's look at this real quick. Much of the conflict and confusion which characterizes the current human plight can be gentled and clarified if we accept the fact that we are genetically very different from each other and inexorably pre-programmed by DNA templates to evolve in many different directions. Now, I just got a chance to go to the glacier in the United States here, Mount Rainier, in Seattle, Washington, right outside Seattle, Washington. And the clouds were over the glacier. They call it a mountain, but it's really a glacier, okay? But at the base of this glacier, I have never had the opportunity to see meadows so beautiful with my own eyes. I've seen pictures of meadows, but I've never seen it with my own eyes, all these wonderful flowers. And it was incredible to recognize that all of these flowers were standing there next to each other. They had different type petals, they were different height, they gave off different aromas, they had different leaves and different leaf shapes, but they were standing next to each other, just like you're all sitting next to each other. And nobody was trying to dominate anybody else. They was on the same land, on the same side of this glacier, under the same sunlight, inhaling and exhaling the same air. And I thought it was really cute because the really little teeny short flowers, a little yellow flower, I didn't get the name of it, was actually the border along the path because it was the smallest. And so as I looked for miles as we walked, this flower was always on the border. And I said, well, you know, is it really possible that the flowers are even courteous among themselves, that they know that this is the smaller one, that they let it be in the front so they can have this little room to grow, because the others were much taller. So I'm just saying that there appeared to be a humanity. You know, it appeared to definitely recognize the fact that, you know, I'm purple over here, she's blue, they're red, I'm yellow, and it was okay. It was like okay, and they were all basically partaking from the elements as they needed it. So as I looked at this for miles, you know, it finally dawned on me that, you know, can human beings finally get it? Okay, that if they can focus on being themselves and not be over here looking at what I got and worshiping for it, and vice versa, and allow me to have what I need to develop to be the best I can be, guess what? We can all become intergalactic beings. Okay, and it's your destiny whether you want to do it this lifetime or 500 lifetimes from now. You must become intergalactic. I can tell you that right now. So the evolutionary progress schedules mutation with a relentless continuity. Every living organism plays a part in the evolutionary design. And see, and this is why going around killing up each other is so detrimental. We caused ourselves a real big setback when the Native American Indians were eradicated from America. That made a big flaw in what was supposed to be happening here. Okay, you cannot continue to go around killing people, and I'm saying this to you as women especially, is that you have to deal with the consequences of allowing your seed to be used to actually smite the son or daughter of another being. You can never do that. And if a woman doesn't stand for that, that whatever comes out of your uterus, it has to be raised, and it can never raise its hand to smite another being. You smite yourself. And so it has amazed me as I've sat in America and looked at these war films, because I try to understand. I understand World War I, II, the coming of World War III, the book is already written. The Civil War, I'm like, the Korean War, it's like, I don't understand any of them. What is it? And when I talk to the people, they didn't even understand why they were there. I'm like, you cannot give me an intelligent rendition, a schemata of why you went to war, why you were sitting here without an arm or leg. I mean, you have to understand that that says a lot about the value of an individual. Okay, and when I look at the women who participated in this, they're having a whole big resurrection to, there's a name for her, the woman, or the women that basically went to war in World War II and soldered all the ships together and screwed the heads on all the bullets. Okay, I'm saying that, you know, this is part of the reason why we're seeing so much cataclysm happen in the offsprings of these women because of what our foremothers and fathers did. You're going to have to start dealing with universal order and the repercussions of things, that when you send something out into the universe, it comes back to the origin. And I'm going to talk about blood so you can understand the origin of it. There is a law of cause and effect. There's no victims here. And so therefore, when our mothers send out waves into the universe, if she herself is not able to catch the benefit, whatever it is, of what she sent out, guess what? Because her children are her children catch it. And we're going to talk about that because you got to understand anatomy and how this works. So let's move through this. Okay. The evolutionary progress schedules mutation with a relentless continuity. Every living organism plays a part in the evolutionary design. There are 8 answers to the basic question, who am I and where am I going? In terms of genetic theology, the question is, in which direction am I mutating? That should be the question. In what direction are you mutating? I told you mine. I'm an immortalist. And whatever it takes for me to be here, I will be here. And I recognize that my form changes every day. Your diet has to change. I use my skin more for nutrition than I do my mouth now. Because one of the keys to be here is that you have to be able to ride the breath. You've got to breathe. And eating becomes second stance. So all of this information has been left for us, especially in the Kemetic legacy, Mayan legacy, etc., on the breath. And so all the people that are dealing with respiratory diseases, skin diseases, etc., sinusitis, you are creating interference in the direction of your genetic mutation. Because these are appendages, these are parts of your anatomy that are going to actually come forward and take major roles where other aspects of your anatomy are going to become atrophic. Okay. The genetic perspective is taboo and frightening because it forces us to face certain embarrassing facts. That the human species is an incomplete form which is undergoing dramatic changes. We are changing. And this is one of the things you have to be aware of. If you do not accept the change and mutation, quote, forward, then you will degenerate, de-evolve, and atrophy, which means that you will die. And most people actually degenerate. They do not allow themselves to mutate forward. Why? Because the information to do so is not known to who? The woman. And if she doesn't know that, then the culture is not established. Males and females are ill-raised, and you're out of here. Okay? So, the human race, and indeed life on the planet, is now at the halfway point. In 3 billion years, we have evolved from unicell organisms. In the years to come, we shall manifest changes much more dramatic. The rate of evolution is accelerating, and we know that. The human condition is changing at an accelerated rate in terms of physique, neurological function, ecology, density, and diversity of population, etc. Consider the human situation 25 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and 10,000 years ago. Now assume that the same rate of accelerated change continues. How will we evolve in the next 25 years, the next 1,000 years? And you and your state of consciousness determines this. You and your state of consciousness determines what your children are going to do. Okay, so whether you believe it or not, we're still homesteading. But now we're homesteading for our place in the galaxy. Check it out. Okay? Yeah. The evolutionary process produces an increasing spectrum of differentiation. The present human gene pool will evolve in many different directions. It is possible that hundreds or thousands of new species will evolve from the present human genetic stock. Now, we can take on stories about how sisters and brothers from other dimensions and from other galaxies have been here pinching off DNA for the last 25 years because of what happened in our future. So, I'm asking you all to honor what you know. Now, you sit up and you talk about the fact that everything was created in 6 days, so you can't tell me that the future don't already exist. Now, what is it? So the future exists if you go by that definition. And y'all go to church and read this every day, and y'all swear that the Bible is right. So if it's right, your future already exists. So you are here in a moment of eon of what you think is time, looking at your own future and determining that relative to your past. That's what I'm telling you I'm doing. So this is what you are basically here really to discuss. What is the future for yourself relative to your children? And truly you can see it all together. It has nothing to do with the fact that you don't have to be here to see it. But you have to be willing to make some changes and to allow some transformations. I don't like the word mutation. Most people think mutation means, ugly and whatever else. It's not that. It's a change and a relinquishing of what used to be. Because once you mutate, you can't go back to how you were. You understand what I'm saying? Once you mutate and change your diet, you can't go back and eat meat. Once the body is clear, that's over. You can't digest it anymore. It will kill you. Okay. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So once you start new breathing practices, you can't stop them. Once you activate certain segments of the brain, that lifestyle is sealed. You cannot not stop. And so I'm saying, so that's when we talk about mutation, that when you move forward and make these shifts in your DNA, you are closing the book on an old lifestyle. That is what I call death, and you're not supposed to experience it in any other way. Okay. Now, the evolutionary process produces an increasing spectrum of differentiation, and we talked about that. The social implications are startling. Okay? Of the next 100 persons you meet, it is possible that each will evolve into a new species as different from you as the rabbit from the giraffe. About 75 million years ago, certain insectivore species, or lemurs, contained the seed force from which the 193 varieties of primates, including the human, were to emerge. To understand yourself, to understand the human situation, it is useful to project a prospectus of how the human species is going to evolve. Much of the conflict and confusion which characterizes the current human plight can be gentled and clarified if we accept the fact that we are genetically very different from each other and inexorably pre-programmed by DNA templates to evolve in our own way. And this is why I'm saying that we as Africans must demand our own standard. It can no longer be anyone else's standard. And as far as I'm concerned in medicine, this is why we don't do well going to Eurocentric medical structures, because the standard is Eurocentric. So I have studies here, and we'll get to those later, where they know that we have a different standard. Our blood quality is different, our standards for health are different, but every time you go into a present Eurocentric institution, they are asking you to become white. You have to basically now become white and become the age of that standard for that particular age group, weight group, etc. And if you don't honor their norm, they label you as having some type of disease, and they get busy treating you. Now, there's nothing wrong with you unless you fall out of your own standard. But your standard isn't used. And this is part of what one of my purposes is this lifetime, is to allow, just like that valley, that meadow that I saw at the base of Mount Rainier, that all of those flowers will be allowed all of us as humans will be allowed to be evaluated by our own standards in the same hospital. And you have to understand, it's literally malpractice. In the United States, where we have hospitals that are servicing communities that are 100% African American, how can you have a Eurocentric standard over these people? There's no white people using the system. So why is their standard the standard? You automatically are going to set in a level of attrition and repress the proper growth and development of those individuals because they're not even seen for who they are. So I'm saying that when I recognize that this information has been known, they've been doing this research on race specificity and differentiation since the 1900s, but it has not been taught in one medical school yet in America. The only standard that is taught is for Caucasians. And I was very upset when I recognized that I wanted to work with my own people. That's why I went to medical school. And I could have stayed in Omaha, Nebraska. I was the first female to be accepted there. But I didn't want to stay there. I wanted to help my own people. But when I recognized that I could not help them because I didn't know their standard, I was real upset after I paid for this. But I had to take responsibility because when I signed on the contract that I was going to go to the school, I didn't ask them, were you going to teach me the standard of the people that I want to serve? You don't ask the question, well, guess what? You have to really deal with the merchandise. So, it has nothing to do with did I know to ask. Yeah, you do know to ask because when you recognize that you're sitting up with almost 500,000 years of information in your DNA, because you didn't know yourself, then whose fault is it that you didn't know to ask? You understand that? I mean, that's how nature plays this, because you come already with an awesome library that you should have accessed before you got busy out here in the world interacting. And that is what the parent is supposed to do. Set up an environment where the individual can access his or her library so that when they step out here making crucial decisions, they have an accurate foundation relative to their reality as to how to proceed. Okay? So, just real quickly, this was the ancient mother of civilization. Okay? This is the modern mother of civilization. Okay, oh yeah, I mean, because we talked about mutation, y'all got to get ready here. Okay, you have to get ready. This is the modern representation of civilization. Okay, she is the vehicle that carries the gateway to this dimension. You understand that? So for those of us who have not processed and learned everything about the database here, you have to come through this gateway. Now there are other people who get here, they don't have to come through this gateway, but they've already mastered the lessons in this dimension. So they can ascend and de-ascend at will. Okay, but because we still are retarded, and I say that very lovingly, okay, you had to come through this gateway for you to get this together. Okay? This is the physical gateway. Okay? And I want you women to understand that. Nobody messes with this. This is an awesome, awesome, awesome organ. This is a heart-lung machine. It is a kidney machine. Do you understand? This is an etheric materializer. This is an awesome scientific entity, this uterus. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Do you see this? This is the size of your little uterus at birth. That's the actual size. I unfortunately had the opportunity to see one when I attended an autopsy on a baby. It was the cutest little thing I had ever seen. I couldn't believe it, that the uterus could be that little. And that under the influence of hormones, etc., that it could actually hold a 12 to 13 pound baby. It's an awesome thing. This is an awesome gateway. Now check this out. Now this comes out of a medical book. Now if anybody knows anything about farming, horticulture, or definitely about physics, definitely about geography, they recognize that this is laying out the ley lines of planet Earth. The way that the muscular bands are laid down flow in the same directions as the ley lines of this planet. Now, does everybody know what a ley line is? Now, I'm trying to get to Gladstoneberry to get to, where we're going? Stonehenge, because I want to stand on those ley lines. So I'm trying to get there since I'm on this part of the world for the energies. This uterus is laid out where all the main grids of electromagnetic energy already are lined in the uterus. Now, if any of you are scientists, you know that this configuration looks like what? This one right here. You all know that? Huh? You all don't know what that looks like? Yes, they do. Now, you know that that is the pattern of an atom. Right here. This is the atomic pattern of an atom. Is that right? And that's how the muscle bundles are actually spit. Just like this is the pattern that an electron takes around the nucleus of an atom. Okay, so you're seeing physics here in living reality. Okay, in this uterus. So you have everything here, physically, geologically, etc., to be able to precipitate matter in this dimension. Now, what's so interesting is that this vessel here actually now draws from the mother the liquor of life, which is amniotic fluid, water. Now, you know, I've been studying water for the last 11 years. Water is awesome, and water is going to set us free here. That's a whole different lecture. That's an awesome substance. But water is condensed space, time, and sky. That's what water is. That's why you as a soul cannot get here unless you sit in it. Because the water precipitates the impression of the quality of your soul. And that's what happens in the uterus. Water is condensed space, time, and sky. It remembers whatever it is impregnated with. So when you are a soul sitting there in this water for 9 months, that water is actually replicating your soul quality. That's why everybody gets here, got different lessons to learn, and comes here looking different. And that's why they have to come on a particular frequency, the frequency of their soul quality. So we're going to talk about what that represents. So this is an awesome organ. So women have been walking around for the last 8,000 years totally decapitated on a spiritual, mental, and emotional level. And their vehicles have been used to bring forth all kinds of abominations to this dimension. One of my husbands was a lawyer, a criminal lawyer. And that was one of the most painful things. I couldn't, you know, I really wanted to support him, but I just could not continue to go down to that courthouse and see that madness down there. And to I feel very intensely, you know, I'm a psychometrist, and to feel the pain of these mothers wailing in the walls and in the floors and in the elevators when these heartless, totally illiterate judges would bang down these gravels and send their seed to prison and to death. It's a terrible thing to have to walk in a public building and see human beings in this day and age be brought in shackles. I mean, the first time I saw that, I almost vomited in the courtroom. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I had only read about these things in textbooks, but this is how they handle slaves. I didn't know that to this day, people are being brought in courtrooms in shackles. Shackled from the ankles, shackled around the waist, shackled around the arms. And there would be a woman that would be actually sitting up there talking about, she's the clerk of the court, calling their name, talking about case number 44367, so-and-so, so-and-so, stand to the bench. I'm like, what? A woman would stand there and support an institution like this that would take her seed and totally treat it like it's trash? A woman would do that, talking about this her job? She is decapitated. She has no feelings that she would actually see this. How could a woman see somebody else's seed that's come out of her uterus be mistreated like this? I don't care what they've done. It's a human being. And there are ways that when you are interested from fourth circuit development, and we're going to talk about this as to why it hasn't happened, because the brain is undeveloped, that you can handle anybody regardless of how they've done in a divine way. So when I see this, I'm like, my goodness, you know, this is not the type, I'm not dealing with humans. You're not dealing with human beings when they talk about a job and they see their own seed being treated like this. Because we're talking about levels of development now. Check this out. The electromagnetic relationship to what actually makes men and women attracted to each other involves a lot of other energetics, which is why the environment of the atmosphere, the cloud issue, the ozone layer, the water issue, actually messes with the sexuality and the electromagnetic polarity of human beings. But it's very important. Everything here is sexual on this planet. And you have to become astute in understanding that. Anytime you touch something, that is sexual contact. So you're sitting in a chair having sex because you're sitting in a chair. That's a sexual contact. And you need to understand this electromagnetically. That's why I'm saying, we've got to become scientists now in understanding what we're talking about and present it in the proper milieu. We have to stop being silent and stop not being able to handle the energetics that we created to master. You understand what I'm saying? So this is the same thing that allows you to be able to make a cake, to sew a dress, to write a paper, to publish a book. These electromagnetic energies are responsible for all creativity, all of it. And when you can't manifest the issues, you got to look at how your polarity is off. And it can be off just like Dr. Maxima said, because of your thoughts, because your thoughts create the emotion, because your diet. It's so many things you have to look at, but it's a straightforward checklist that you as parents have to know when you see that there is ill performance in yourself or your children. It's really important to understand that because there's a problem with the electromagnetic flow of the individuals. So this is a whole lecture in itself, but I just want you to understand that I want you to stay with me where we are. This now anatomically is the physical gateway. And it's interesting, seeing hundreds and thousands of vaginas in my lifetime, this type of geometry takes on a particular form here. So please excuse this. My undissected transparency got away from me here, so I had to use this one, but I'm going to help you see what I'm seeing. This normally would be skin, this normally would be skin, so you would not be able to see what's underneath, okay? But since we are given a peek here, I do want you to understand that there is a master intelligence. I call it the creator or inter, you can call it a lie, you can call it whatever you want to, but truly arteries and veins, nerves, lymphatics, tissues like this don't get laid down by the Big Bang phenomenon. You got to get that. When you go inside of your body and see the miraculousness and the order of it and recognize that it is sealed forever. See, that's awesome. The creator that I came from is so awesome that it can make something that can last indefinitely and seal that bad boy forever. If you take care of it, you never have to go in it. See, that lets you know right off the bat that surgery is unnatural. Okay, it's unnatural. But many times to bring people back into reality, you got to do unnatural things to get them back here. And we understand that. I mean, if you get smashed up in a car accident, there's no need for the herbalist to rush to your side because you're going to need some sutures to pull your arms and things and put them back in place. Do you understand that? But it was an unnatural event that requires an unnatural specialty to bring you back. But after you are sewn back together, then you've got to go into wholeness. And that's where my colleagues fail. Because it is a science that has been created for unnatural phenomena, and they do not have a hookup to bring people back into wholeness. So we have people that get smashed over and over again. Having one accident, they don't get woke up as to how they created that, and what they need to do is a wake-up call. So they have to have 3 or 4 and hope they can live through them. And nobody's ever shown them that you are on a cycle. You know, you're in a rut. It's like on a record, and you're in a scratch groove and can't get out. Okay, because you need some information so you can get to the next level that hasn't been imparted to you. But check this out now. This is the clitoris, these are the labia minora, this is the entrance to the vagina. Now, as I was studying one day and I was looking at what was supposed to be art, that was an artistic, mathematical expression of how the galaxy functioned, this is what the page had. And I was like, wow, that looks real familiar. Why does it look so familiar? I was like, wow. And they told me this is the vortex that enters into this galaxy. I was like, wow, this looks real familiar. And I ran and got my anatomy book, and I put this on top of it, and I was like, whoa, that's really heavy. Okay, because it was showing me literally, if you look at this dot right here, okay, this is the same dot right here, that's the entrance to the vagina. So this is the labia again, this is the entrance to the vagina. So we're looking at the gateway to this dimension, which literally, believe it or not, is heaven. And I think Dr. Ben talked about that. So therefore, so now check this out. So therefore, here I am looking at the gateway to this dimension. Okay, now this is a biggie. This is a biggie, and when I am doing what I call lifestyle support, I can't even go there and talk about psychiatric therapy because I don't want the patient to be confused that I'm using any of these techniques that would keep them shackled to an idea for 20 years. Okay, because that's how most psychotherapists work. But if this is the gateway to this dimension, and the whole point for you coming here is to get a chance to reactivate your library, your DNA, so that you can figure out what you need to do to be able to ascend off of this planet, then your mother and father basically have done everything that they need to do. So when I have people sitting with me that are 45, 50, 60, 70 years old still crying about what their mama didn't do, I was like, they missed this one real big. Okay, because if she walked off and she never saw you again, if you never saw your father again, you got the goal. The goal is you got a body that has I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of years of information for you to access for you to move forward. So therefore, you cannot cry over the icing when you have the cake. And that's really important. That are holding on to garbage and trash about what you think your mama didn't do, daddy didn't do, etc., let it go today. I want you to go home privately and I want you to release them. And I want you to recognize that you have everything you need and that you need to start looking inward because the library is it. So if you have parents that are loving you and that, are coaching you along the way, etc., I'm telling you, you should be so grateful you don't know what to do. Just like Master Teacher Ami has said, you must honor them. Do you understand that? You must honor them because you got to go. And that's just it. And we need to leave that alone and stop wasting so much time. Okay, that was a real big psych job used to keep people in a groove on a scratch record of their DNA and not to be able to move forward. Do you understand that? So there's some other things that go along with that, but we'll talk about that. Now, check this out. Now, when I turn the next page in the book, this is what they said. They were saying that, wow, when you go up into this gateway, you are sitting there learning. In this gateway, when you get a body, your body already is learning the heavenly sciences. It's learning the human or biophysical sciences. It's learning the earthly sciences. So that's why, as Dr. Amy has said, I want to make you a doctor, Master Teacher. Can I just defer upon your degree here? I want to make you a doctor. Paul, you have to be born, and you're already born an astrologer, an astronomer, a physicist, a geometrist, a dancer, a healer. You're already born these things. And the DNA or the genetic marker that you activate when you step out in this dimension known as birth is the spin-off point that you're going to then learn all the rest of this stuff so you can make your ascension. See, so there is no divine purpose that is so lowly or insignificant that you should ever try to reprogram a child that he should forget about that and go over here and learn this. Okay, and these mothers are doing this. Oh, what you over there making them baskets for? You ain't gonna make no money doing that. You better get over here and get this book. What is that for? Okay, because I go to all these stores, the very nice stores, that's all they have is tons of baskets. Some of them cost $200-300 each. Do you hear me? And I'm saying that basket weaving, cleaning, whatever, The key is, what is the standard that that individual should be taught as to how they should deliver their gift? So whether it's making baskets, cleaning, ironing, physics, geometry, where is the standard that they should deliver their gift or purpose through? That is what is not in place. It's not about whether one is better than the other, because all of these are gateways, whichever one you have activated at birth, that you have to get everything else. You're not going to leave here unless you become a physicist and a mathematician and everything else. I don't care if you are a dancer. Or if you're going to make your ascension, you're going to have to learn all of it. I'm telling you, you're already sitting in it. The uterus teaches you that. The uterus is supposed to already download and activate all of this in your DNA. See, when the mother understands who she is, when she gets pregnant, this is supposed to be activated when you step out. That's why I don't recommend women work when they're pregnant, because they're supposed to be activating this. Her consciousness in thinking this activates this. So we bring people here, sleep mothers, because we're so busy working. Oh, you got to work, so you don't have time to go somewhere and activate the little person's DNA so he can step out already on purpose. You're too busy working. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? This is a real big crime that we create. So then when you have somebody sitting up here that's blundering around, not understanding what's happening, then you want to get with the teacher. The teacher's supposed to be helping these individuals refine all this raw information. They showed you that in the X-Men. The people are already walking through walls and having X-ray vision and levitating. The teacher's only helping them get control over it so they don't destroy themselves. They're not supposed to be wondering, do they have any gifts? But you're busy working, so therefore you can't activate this. And I'm talking to the brothers here too, because you should not even think about warning your wife to be working while she's bringing a genius here. And it's your responsibility for you to figure out how to master this dimension so that she can have everything she needs so that person can step out of here jamming. So that's the price for everybody wanting to keep their organs, their genitals, turned to the reproduction diet. Now you have to understand what I'm telling you here, because we're multi-purposeful. We're multi-purposeful, so our tissues can be used for many different things depending upon the mindset that's driving the tissue. So it's just like a TV set. When you buy the TV set, it's already programmed to some channel. When you plug it in, the people come up talking. Now, if that's not the channel you want to look at, then you got to get the manual and figure out how to change it. Is that right? Well, it's the same thing for your genitals. That's why I call them genitals. Because when you call them reproductive organs, then you have set them on the reproductive channel. But that's not the only channel they play. They also play regeneration. They also play neurologic development. They also have an enlightenment channel. So therefore, why haven't you learned how to turn the channel? So if you want to be sexually active but you don't want to reproduce, then you got at least 3 other channels you can turn them to. But if you didn't turn the channel and they still on reproduction, well, guess what? You got to get busy finishing the process, because everything is a circle. And that means that for men, you got to be able to sit her down so that she can create a genius out here, somebody getting ready to show up, take the planet to a higher level, because you all were playing reproduction. And if she tells you she don't know how to play any other channel, but then you need to leave her alone or either help her get some instruction. And if you don't know how to play that and you don't want to reproduce, then you need to get some instruction too. This is very critical, and it should be part of what we are taught and what our children are taught. No, you do not shove something up you, talk about you don't know how to basically change the station, so you're going to jam the switches. That's what the level of reproduction is now that's offered. It's an insult to your intelligence. It's an insult. Every place I have been looking at the codices, looking at these primitive markings, looking at the internet, or as you may know it as the hieroglyphs, all the stuff I've seen, from circumcision to brain surgery to all kind of things to actually raw Shechem, I have never looked in, and I went to the bottom of the temple of Dendera. in the chamber of Het Heru and Isis, and I have not seen where they had those feminine chambers there to the birth houses. They never had any sanitary pads and no tampons chiseled into the wall. Now, they had endometrium then just like they do now. But that was part of you learning how to be able to control your genitalia, that through the breath you don't have to menstruate. That's what causes premature menopause. Menopause is a disease. It is a deficiency. It is a deficiency, and you know that. That's why they're telling you we're going to replace the hormone. They're telling you because you're deficient, we're going to replace it. And it is because you have let so much of your nutrients bleed out of you for so many years, you have now bled out the nutrients in your pineal and pituitary glands and exhausted your ovaries. That was never to happen, because if you look at women, especially at the level we're evolving, you're most capable of having children when you're 45, 50, 60 years old. And so therefore, now they already showed you, they took a lady 69 years old and she carried the baby 9 months and had it. And the only thing they did was give her an injection because she only had a deficiency. That was all that was wrong with her. There was nothing else wrong with her body. So there's no such thing that you cannot have children. And the Bible even talks about these women, Sarah and all of them. They were like way up in their age having children. That's why they were able to have evolved beings. So if it takes you this long to learn how to get control over your genitals, then that has to be done, but that's part of what has to be taught. So, Master Teacher, you said you wanted to say something?
I was just going to say simply, in Igbo language, chi is like your spiritual energy within you.
Right.
And it says that you can do anything in this life, but you can never go against your chi. But the ego will lead us all over the place to stop us fulfilling what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. Thank you. Now check this out. Now truly, I used to have an abomination for astrology. I was like, that is madness, foolishness. There's nothing scientific about it. And I said, Jewel, for you to invest so much energy in disliking something, I think you better look at it. And so therefore, if you ask for truth, truth will always reveal itself in whatever the situation is. So I said, okay, well just show me the truth that this has any validity. So all of a sudden I got this clock, an astrology clock, that every 2 hours of the day, the influences on the planet would generate this type of orientation in consciousness. And I was like, really? I don't believe it. So I just copied the clock and put it around in my office. I had one in every exam room, and I kept one on me. And I just started noticing what the influence was. So for example, from the hours of 11 to 1, that's a Capricorn time, and that deals with honor, fame, and fortune, reputation, etc. And I would just watch what would happen at that time. So from 11 to 1 o'clock, if the patients weren't a Capricorn, which is their time, they were coming in talking about their reputation, fame, fortune, honor, etc. I had asked nothing. I'd never seen people in my life. And they would basically come on this vibration. And I just noticed this. I studied this for 1 year. And I said, this is incredible. I'm in a different city, and the clock still works. Okay? And it was interesting, because all the patients during that time, they all had the same birthday, or they either were coming with the same issues. And I was like, that was amazing, because nobody can even get to you unless the cosmic clock allows the frequency to come through. That's just how awesome this is. Which says a lot about what happens, again, when you sit in this uterus. Because as a person sits in this uterus, their soul materializes these frequencies of information that are bombarding this person based upon the time zones, or I'm going to say the time zones relative to the seasons of this planet, the rotation of the planet relative to its position in our solar system, all are activating certain information in your DNA. So that's why it's so interesting that if this is a 270-day cycle and you have to gain 360 degrees of information, then you already come here with 270 degrees activated, and the rest is for you to get. It's a given. It's amazing. And so for somebody to have to join an organization and start off at 1 degree, and it's interesting because that's how they treat them, actually like infants, and they got to be born until they initiate. It's an insult, because this has already happened. The universe already initiated it. So I'm saying that this is very, very real, and it's important for the mother and the father to understand that when this person exits this active library, that they need to know then what their responsibility is for that child to set them on the road to actualizing the rest of the degrees of the information. They can get activated in the uterus. See, this is what these sacred sciences used to do. They used to tell you about what these individuals needed. And we still have to go back to this. Again, now this is very interesting because there's something known as the psi bank. The psi bank is the actual memory bank of everything that has ever happened on this planet. You can access the psi bank directly when you have activated enough neurons to do so. That's how you can channel information, as Master Teacher said, and bring it through direct. And you don't need anybody's books or whatever else. You can bring it straight through. We all sit in the sphere, the psi bank, the photon sphere, and all of this is actually going on in the uterus. That's why the mother's consciousness is very important while she is pregnant. Now check this out. Now this is also what's happening here with the mother in activating the DNA, because all of this is happening in the uterus. So this psychogenic, primordial, synesthetic feedback core is being activated. The data and information for you to be able to take in and assess all of this information through the eye, through the ear, through the nose, through taste, and then finally through the body for all of this. Check this out. Tongue development, encoded, gustatory, informational sensors for all cooking, for all food, all these things. All of this is actually encoded in the DNA. This is supposed to be happening in this uterus. This uterus is awesome. Now we talk about the DNA, and Master Teacher had this up here yesterday. Now this one I thought was just really awesome. Again, all the information is downloaded when you come in. You have the AC current, which is an aboriginal continuity, and you have the CA current, which is the civilization advanced information. Because you have to remember now, when you come in, you are dealing with past, present, and your future. It's already created. It's already done. And you're here basically synthesizing all of this. Now, all of this is ancient Mayan information. The time zones and everything are all synchronized. Check this out. Now, this is interesting because when you look at this. Now, again, this is your DNA. Okay. These are how your little chromosomes look. Okay. So it's not coincidental that the caduceus that you saw yesterday, these structures here, they all look the same because they're one and the same thing. Okay, this is a condensed data storage systems. Okay? Now this one is profound because what does it tell you? That also activation of the DNA is what? Activation of the heaven and the earth forces. Heaven is here. And you don't let anybody tell you that you got to go somewhere to get it. When they start shouting that, I leave. Because it's an insult to my intelligence when you know who you are. So don't tell me about going nowhere. I'm here. I'm here. Heaven is here. So when they start that foolishness, it's an insult to my intelligence. For me to stay, I got to give myself a lobotomy or I got to excuse myself. Okay. Your DNA and your capacity to actualize that is going to be your heaven and your earth. And you're supposed to basically bring them here. Through your mind, through sight, through sound, through smell, through taste, through touch. And you have all the data on board to be able to do this. And this, again, is the DNA genetic time clock that is activated by a binary numerical system to actually trigger off the DNA. Now, this is actually a template on how the psi bank works. Because each one of these black dots is a day in a year on a particular calendar that the gateways open. We call them galactic activation portals. And when those portals open, you can download any information from the past or from the future. Now that is why meditation is so important. Because if you know what these days are, any information that you want to have, you just go sit down somewhere, the portals are open, and you synthesize it. So these people cannot be running anything on you that you cannot basically already decipher for yourself, because you can go to the database of this dimension and find out if it's true or not and get all the details that you can absorb, etc.
Thank you.
So now, if you are under the influence of alcohol, cigarettes, chocolate, caffeine, bad eating, and definitely morbid thoughts of inadequacy, you might as well not waste your time when these portals open. Because the neurochemistry in your blood from those type of thoughts and substances basically do not allow the higher circuits to synthesize this and bring this forth in consciousness. Now, whether you realize it or not, you're still being bombarded when these portals open, but you don't know it. And it cannot be brought forward because the blood chemistry from the brain will not allow you to know this level of sensitivity. See, because it's all there, but it's like the thoughts are the keys and the gateways to allow you to do that. So let me just say this real quickly, because we're not through half of my lecture, and she's over here trying to shut me down. I want to give you this, but check this out. Now, this lady was an astrophysicist, and as much as she knew about matter and its interreaction in this dimension, that didn't answer the question for her about the mind. Or what was it? What is it? And I know I have one, but I can't necessarily express this mathematically. What's the situation? They took this lady's book off the market. She wrote this book in 1976. I had to pay almost $100 for somebody to find this through a lost book researcher to get her book. Okay, because a lot of this stuff, I'm telling you, they sequester. Barbara Brown's laws of the supermind. Barbara Brown's laws from the supermind, and then you can write this down, see if you can pay somebody to get you a copy. Okay. Was published by Harper and Row in 1979 here, are based on findings from contemporary biofeedback research. And this is what she found out. She used her physics to really, in her mind, give her a template to understand what the mind really is. And this is what she discovered. That human beings have innate biological awareness of their physical state down to the level of a single cell. And it's an important type meditation. And see, and this is what is so important about this family structure, the school structure that you have to create, is that it is your responsibility that you should be able to talk to any cell in your body, any cell in your body. And you should be able to have a mechanism where that cell can fire through your nervous system into your consciousness to know that it is listening and understands what you are saying. And if you talk to anybody who is an expert in what they do through their physical body, they have that kind of biofeedback relationship. Any athlete, any dancer, they can tell you, in regards to what you thought about the performance, they know when it was divine or not. Because they know when the feedback from their tissue is on point. They know what the sensation is. And so sometimes they feel very bad about saying that they won because they know that the performance and the communication was off in them. That y'all still didn't see their stuff. And I'm saying that you can talk to the very cell on the end of your toe. And you need to start practicing that. Focus on a point on your body and begin to communicate with that. Because when you can do that, now all of the body can respond to you. That's why you can decide, you know, look, these people are coughing and sneezing over here. Well, leave it, their problem. I don't have time. Whatever they're spraying, whatever they're carrying, cannot be my problem. And you can tell that to your body. Your body understands it. The immune system will kick in, and you will not have the symptoms. Doesn't mean that you're exposed. You're not exposed, but you will not get the disease because you've already told your body, we're not going there. Now, understand what I'm telling you, because why do you think that everybody didn't die when they had the plagues here in Europe? There was pus and viruses and everything, bubonic plague, all this stuff flying all everywhere. The people who were dragging the bodies out and burning them, how come they didn't drop dead? Because they were real clear. We got a job to do. We got new bodies made up here. They got to be discarded. I don't have time. And so therefore, I am not getting sick. And the pus and everything running all down their legs. They throwing bodies on the fire, just working content. They ain't got no fever, no nothing. And everybody else don't even want to look and running with a handkerchief over their face. And they run into the disease and die. Ain't never touched nobody. I'm telling you now, listen to me when I'm telling you about AIDS. Because these things only go as far as the human mind will let them. They cannot create anything that you cannot master. I don't care what it is. But see, you cannot have this level of immunity until you basically understand who you are. As it was said yesterday, the brain is the master pharmaceutical company. There's not a vaccine, there's not a medication that your brain can't make, cannot make. But now, do you know how to communicate with yourself? Human beings can control the direction and flow of nerve impulses throughout the body. You control your nerve impulses. The human mind can intervene in and direct any physiological function. Yes, I am a firewalker. I tell my feet, my body when it's going to burn or not. It doesn't tell me it's going to burn. I tell it. So I told you now, you have to hear me. The body is born already in a default mode. You got a computer, it'll tell you right there. You want customized programming or you want the default program. So you leave it on the default program, it's got a program that it does all the time unless you say, oh no, we're going to customize this bad boy. And then it works differently. The body is the same way. It's got a default and a customized. And when you customize it, you get a different response. You don't want to be burning fire anymore? Well, then you got to customize your body. You don't want to get sick because somebody else is coughing and sneezing? You got to put it on a customized program. This is what you have to understand, that you've got to sit down and tell your children, because this guy you got to operate. So you do not allow mediocrity to come out of your children. And you have to ask them, what program were you running? Is this the default? Or was this the customized program? Did you create a customized program? Because the customized program now is supposed to be the culture. Now check out what I'm telling you. When the bladder is full, it fills, and then the muscles automatically going to contract. And if you haven't put the bladder on a customized program, you will have urine running down your leg. It don't matter what you got on and where you are. It has a default program. So now you better customize that, and you all call it toilet training. And the customized program says, oh, we don't contract and squeeze all the urine out. We give you a sensation, okay, and then you're supposed to tell us what we're supposed to do. You tell the bladder, I'm busy, be quiet, get a grip, I don't have time. The bladder does what? It calms down and it gets quiet so that you can continue on. Does it not? And depending upon how obedient the bladder is, when you finally do urinate, you can't believe how long it takes you to empty it. The bad boy just did the best he could do. The men do this all the time. They know they have to have a bowel movement. They're like, no, we're not. We're busy. We don't want to go here. They go the whole day. Forgot. Didn't even go the next day. Rectum, whole lower colon full of stool. The body wants to be on default, but you gave it a customized program and it does as you say. I'm just giving you the obvious. Where's your customized program? I'm saying you can't give to your children what you don't have for yourself. Where is the customized program? Okay? Let me just finish this, please. Disease originates where? In intellectual processes. She didn't say nothing about no test tube. She didn't say nothing about somebody coughed on me. She didn't say anything about the fact that the tree fell on me. None of that stuff. It says disease originates in intellectual processes. Now I'm going to tell you about this now. Check this out. Accident. Car turns over. Mama's got her baby in the car. The baby's thrown out the seat. The car's on the baby. The mama gets up, lifts up the car, and pulls the car off the baby. But she didn't even have a leg. She lost her leg and didn't even know it because she went over here and saved the baby. Do you understand what I'm telling you? So I'm telling you that as far as she was concerned, she had a leg, and she had strength enough, too, to lift up the car off the baby. Okay, because that is what she wanted to do. So there was nothing that was an issue that said she wasn't going to master that. So disease originates where? In the intellectual processes. And to just show you how profound this is, this was sent to me. To show you that so what if her little leg was cut off for the moment, because she can grow another one. Because with that same attitude, oh yes, you can. Do you understand that? There's a whole tribe in Africa here, the Mtabulo tribe, that regenerates their limbs. A machete incident, we didn't pay attention, whatever else, etc. Yes, they get new arms and legs. You get new fingernails, you get new hair, you can get new everything. And that's why I'm saying it's an abomination for you to go around scratching in the graveyard and looking at somebody else and lusting for their organs when you can get your own stuff. And I'm saying that you have to know who you are, because this is the gift of melanin. A melanated individual can generate and regenerate any aspect of their body. The less melanin you have, yes, it is more difficult for you to do that, and Caucasians know that, which is why they created this pseudoscience. That is not your science, that is theirs. And that is why they also know that the ideal blood and organs that they want to have come from melanated people. So I say to them is that they don't basically have to create all of these schemes and things for them to be able to have access to my tissues. And see, this is where the honesty is going to have to come out. And they finally are bellying up, as they would say, but they still got a lot of stuff under the cover. That you're not going to go around here siphoning off my blood, pinching off my tissues, regrowing tissue cultures and things for you to put in storage. Because you want to stay in control. See, they're playing some heavy control games because you're not in control. Nature didn't put you in control. But you can be here with me just like all the other flowers on the meadow, but you are not going to steal and usurp my energies by trying to keep me asleep. And this is the karma that they're going to have to finally admit to. Because they can have life indefinitely and they can have immortality, but it has to come from them being with us. Because you have to understand that we are the superconductors, and they know that. We are the superconductors of life force energy, of vitality. And we not only make enough for ourselves, but for anybody else that's in our environment. And as long as they're around us, we will create enough life force energy that they can live indefinitely. But you will not control me. And this is where the game is being played at this level of technology. But see, you got to know your melanin, and you got to understand the physics about how you work and how vitality works to understand what's happening here. And as a parent, if you want to be a parent in the presence of your child, because see, the child can get it. See, my mother didn't teach me this, but I got it because I wanted it. But she gave me the vehicle to get it by letting me pass through her uterus. See, because it was encoded in me. So I'm saying that if you're going to be in the presence of your children, then give them the icing and make it easier for them, because they can get it if they want it. But don't be a stumbling block. You know, it's better that you give them away than be a stumbling block with foolishness. Degrading them, beating on them, not telling them who they are, etc. A whole bunch of foolishness. When you don't know, say you don't know. And be able to say, let's grow together. I'm retired. You have to understand, I'm in the process of liquidating one of the immortal sins, and that is the perception of lack in anything, and especially in money. And so I tell my children when they ask me for things, if I feel that it's not appropriate that they have to get it on their own and that I don't have it, if I don't have it, I was like, okay, I'm learning on this. I'm in the last stages of getting this abundance principle correct from this perspective. And any information I have to download with you so that you don't have to go here, I give it to them on how to handle money, finances, etc., because that is part of my responsibility, that if that hasn't been developed and mastered in my family line, then I must do it. But it has to end with me. I'm not going to pass that legacy down for them, because it's like once you get the cash, that's just one aspect of it. It's like having a baby. So what, the baby's here. Now you got a whole nother level that you got to rise to. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's like for them, it's like, okay, now we got the cash, now how you going to manage it? Okay, that's a whole nother science. What you going to do with it? Because anything, I don't care what it is, if you don't know how to manage it properly, now becomes your weakness and can possibly take you out of here. So you can't ask for stuff and then not know how to circulate it and manage it. So if I bring it here, if one generation brings it, then it's the next generation to manage it and to make sure that it never ever brings ill will back to the family. So when I have studied money, because that's part of your responsibility, when you don't know something, you get busy studying it. So many people have gotten it and it has destroyed them, tore their butts up. So when you read about the Winchesters and the Carnegies and the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers, because they did not understand the laws, what they acquired has destroyed them. Kennedys, look at it. And so you can't gain stuff under ill will and basically clean it up. No, you can't. Mother Nature is the only one that can basically transmute that. And if you didn't get right with her, then you can't transmute it. So if you're killing and robbing and doing drug money, you're gonna have to deal with that, okay? Because the only way that it can be transmuted is that you got to bring it to Mother Nature and right it, which means that you can't stay in the same business. But you want to stay in the same business and deal with the cash, you would die for that. And I'm saying these are universal laws that you got to understand and be able to teach when these people want to go there. So the key here is you have to ask yourself, if you sit there and you begin to glean anything that I'm telling you here, you have to ask yourself, what is your problem? Because you have everything. It's already within you. You can do everything. Human beings have evolved new sophisticated senses. One is an unconscious sense of order in which we anticipate the sequence of natural events and move from chaos to unity. Now, we should be moving from chaos to unity. And that's why I'm saying that you have to ask yourself, why are you still talking about a war? And I'm very concerned as I work with women, and I really address this to the Caucasian woman. What is her need to continuously feel that she has the right to nurture anybody to raise their hand against somebody else? I am tired of it, and I want to know what is going on with you that you just can't ask for what you want. And if we say no, that you go somewhere else and get it. You cannot go tramping through Africa and basically killing off people and whatever else because you want some oil. You can have it, but now you got to be willing to come up with the resources. That's what we ask for. You produce money every day. It's nothing but a joke. You just turn on the printing press, make some cash, and how much we want is how much we say we're going to give you the oil for. It ain't nothing but ink and paper and killing the trees every day. So, it's like it has really any real value behind it. It's just an agreement. Do you understand what I'm saying? But the idea that you want to basically keep this nothing paper, and then you're going to basically come over here and take my oil and will kill me? No, your seed cannot be blessed, and you got plenty karma for that, and they know that. It's coming up the road. Okay, and I'm saying that they have to understand that it cannot continue because they are killing themselves by this kind of greed behavior. Okay, and I just think about this. I said, all of these hundreds of thousands, millions of bodies at their hand, how do they think they're going to deal with this? And see, and you have to understand yourself, if you, as an Indian person, Asian person, African person, are sitting up there wanting to be in their high heel shoes, you are going to get your butt kicked too. Why would you basically want to emulate these kind of people with this kind of value? You straighten your hair for what? You want to wear their clothes for what? You want to eat their food for what? Because they show you their deeds. And I'm saying, why would a woman want to emulate this? And this is what she's done. When I'm an American, I recognize these women have sustained 100 years or more. 100 years or more. Do I want my seed to perish? Do I want to leave here because I want to get with them and take on their karma? No, I don't. I'm interested in helping them neutralize it because I want to know what is this fear, this insecurity that they have that would make them have such disrespect for life. Because everybody's here able to have what they want. I told you about the metal. So you don't have to suck up the other person's stuff. You can get your own. It's the resources right here. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I'm saying that mankind is the only person that goes for that, and it comes from the uterus of the woman, because she breeds that. And there have been books written about the violence in the Caucasian race and the willingness of the woman to continuously nurture those genes, because they're gene markers, and they know that. So I'm saying that you got to get real clear here on what you're emulating and why and what is the value, because you take on a slice of the pie. That's why you can't work for anybody. You know, so we're constantly talking about, oh, I got a job with so-and-so. And I'm like, yeah, they don't know they got a bunch of help. Okay, because you haven't asked for the perspective. Well, what does this company stand for? Where are their investments? Where are their holdings? They got people down in South Africa on their knees in 110 degrees shipping out diamonds, keeping them from their families twice a year. And of course, the karma's on them because they didn't have to come there, but they got problems here too. But the point is, do I want to be in that circle? No, I don't want to work for De Beer. I don't want to type a paper for them. I don't want to clean a toilet. I don't want to do nothing for them because I don't want none of the karma. So when you have pride in yourself, you recognize that it's not about you giving me a job. I'm contributing my divine life force energy to help your plan work. And am I going to get a piece of that pie that you're creating? What is the pie? No, I don't want any of that. It's got blood on it. So you have to pick yourself up and see who you are. So no, I'm not going to work for Seagram 7. All of the babies and all the people come to me, women that have been raped under the influence of alcohol. I'm going to work for alcohol? Oh, no, I'm not. Okay, for a while when I was in medicine, I had to ask myself, was I in hell? Because I had never seen such monstrosities before and how people have treated each other in my life when I've had to moonlight in these emergency rooms. And we need to look at ourselves here. The first time I had to admit a 6-month-old baby whose rectum and vagina was one orifice because she was raped by a grown man, I had to really get a grip here on how I wanted to see you all. This was the mother's boyfriend. And they woke me up out of my bed to have to get this little baby prepped to go to surgery to have her genitalia redefined. Now, I do not understand how a 6-month-old vagina now becomes a sex object. See, I don't understand that. But see, that's not in my chemistry. But see, I recognize that I stand alone on that because there's a whole bunch of folks, males and female children, that are coming to get their rectums and their vaginas repaired. So you know who you are, and you have to ask yourself and go get some help to deal with these distortions of reality, because that's what they are. So now you have to understand that the little baby girl that comes here like that and the little boy that comes here like that, they're not victims. Because I told you about the law of cause and effect, and I told you about the mirror principle that deals here. And you have to understand that you don't get treated like that unless you have treated others this way. And you are looking at one eon in your lifetime of many lives. So you have to understand, you cannot mistreat people and think that it does not come back, sooner or later. And it's an awesome thing when you have to come back here as a small body, perceived infant, and have to start getting your big time karma.
That's right.
But the key is, do I want to be in the circle at all? See, that's what you have to ask yourself. Do I want to be in the circle at all? And your state of consciousness determines this. So you got to start seeing things as they are, actually in the coil, in the spiral, like DNA. This is how life is. Ain't no straight line. This is not your first lifetime. You're everything and have been everything for always. You're a manifestation of the Creator, and you got to start understanding that. Are you going to still see yourself as a little nerd on the planet or a manifestation of the Creator here to seal the dimension and bring forth heaven on earth? And you can decide that at any point in time. It has nothing to do with how much money you had, what family line you came through, etc. It all starts right now, wherever you step off from. And that's why we have individuals who are little idiots. They showed you already. It's a consciousness. The lawnmower man, if you haven't seen that, see it. We take an idiot savant, and he gets downloaded with the proper neurotransmitters, and he now becomes a god. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, intrinsically, you can do that for yourself. That means that from your own state of consciousness, you can make yourself a god or goddess. You don't need anybody to inject you. The same thing in the Matrix. All of those circuits of the brain were activated. You don't need a computer download and to have a data bank placed in your head to get the upload on the data that's already in your DNA. Yes, you're already a feng shui master, Aikido man, whatever you want to think you are, you are. all you have to do is be able to access the databanks in your own DNA. And so you have to understand when they're showing you this, based on the people who are creating this, because they are missing segments of DNA, this is how they're able to access and replace within them what is missing. That is not your destiny. That's why you have to know that if they're showing you that we got to download from outside, then you know you got to go within and upload from within. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm like, I appreciate the idea that they're so desperate to bring themselves into wholeness that they're remembering, because when they remember, then I remember. But I remember where my source comes from. It comes from within. I don't have to have any external databanks for me to be who I am, because I have all the DNA complements. Order of intellectual capacities, elegant and sophisticated, reside in what we call the unconscious, and may always reside there because they are unrecognized by society. And so I'm saying that you cannot continue to be asleep in being part of a society that does not bring wholeness into the integration of the right and left lobe of the brain, because that's what she's talking about. Most of you are not hemisync. That is part of your destiny. In Kemet, you could not move forward in the creative arts in any form unless you became hemisync. That was part of why you had to go to the temples. Pythagoras brought out the basic templates to do that, known as sacred geometry, and established his secret mystery system in Rome, of which it fell, but many of those techniques are back again. You must understand geometry and its relationship as to how it activates and integrates the neurons of the brain. So I'm saying that, you know, there's a tremendous amount of work for you. That's a lot of fun that will allow you to progress and activate yourself, and therefore your children, but you have to make the decision that you want to go forth. And so I'm saying that to you as women, it's important for you to recognize that you are a divine gateway. You are a cherished stargate to this dimension. Your states of consciousness, the things that you eat, the way that you carry yourself impacts this whole dimension, of which, because everything returns to the feet from which it originated from, we have to start taking our dose of the medicine. Everything comes back to us. Women are crying about why they're abused, why they're misused, why they're basically not being paid. This is all because of your state of consciousness. This is because of how you impregnated your tissues, and therefore the people that sat in your uterus, that you weren't good enough. You basically are not willing at this point in time to actualize the feminine. It is not our responsibility to act like men. Men are supposed to do what they're supposed to do. You're supposed to basically be the gateway and the feminine vessel that comes here. There's an attitude, there's an awareness, and there's a methodology that you use that is unique to solve all problems. It is not a male modality. What is that? How does that look? How do you behave when you have a problem? Women basically don't have to do much on a physical level. They are mental and they are emotional as how they work, and they don't have to say much, because the mind of the woman permeates every aspect of this dimension. So you don't need a telephone if you want to communicate. You don't need paper if you want to write a letter. That's just how profound you are created to be. So when you get to busy wanting to be active, or what we call the yang principle, and moving around and shuffling stuff and get real vocal and a whole bunch of other things, you totally shut down all of this information that works through you so that you can be a stationary home body. So I'm saying that we have to be willing to rediscover who we are as the feminine, how that functions, and to begin to extrude, literally, this kind of energy all over the planet again, so that abundance is everywhere. Abundance is everywhere. You know, I love the Saudi Arabians because they show me that even on the desert, you can know abundance. They ain't got nothing but hot air, sunlight, sand, and underneath oil, and they are one of the richest countries on the planet. So if you have water and fauna and flora and sunlight and everything, how could you know poverty? But you know it because it's in your state of consciousness. So I'm saying that you can make anything wealthy. You can make anything work for you. But first of all, you have to be willing to see the opportunity and to then basically use it for what you need it for. And this is the insight of the woman. She talked about Helen Keller. Well, Helen Keller's mother was the nidus that allowed Helen Keller to do what she did, because she didn't see this as an animal on the floor scrubbing and fumbling around here as a disgrace to the family. Her thing was a very low, lofty goal. I just want the lady to be able to come and sit at the table with us and have dinner. That's all she wanted. That she's going to be able to pick up a spoon and fork and not eat like an animal from a plate. And she never gave up, and she recognized also that she couldn't do it. But she found somebody who could. And she was willing to trust, to get the help, and because she held the vision. See, the mother does the greatest thing. It doesn't mean that you have to physically do it. She held the vision. And because she held the vision, it is a magnetic pull. It is a vector that pulls energy, people, circumstances to make the reality come forth. The reality came forth. Not only was she able to sit at the table, but help a whole bunch of other folks sit at the table, write, whatever else, etc. This is the power of the feminine, and you have to learn how to reclaim that. But you have to accept what you have. The uterus is not a curse. It is a gift. It is a great gateway. So you have to begin to cherish what you have, extol it, create a culture around it, so that men alike will also value it and be able to understand where you begin and where you end. I was listening to a master teacher yesterday, and I had a gentleman that came to me, and he's in court now with his wife, and they're battling over the 6-year-old son. And so he feels that the boy should be with him. The mother says the boy should be with her. And I told him that they both were right. The matter was timing. Because at 6 years old, for an African child that is mature and grown physiologically at 14, this boy should be ending and being weaned away from the mother and the feminine, and should be actually going through rites of passage, so that by 7.5 or 8, he should really be under the dominion of his male self through his father. And so I said, but now you are, asking for this child, but are you prepared to really take the child on? The father had no nutritional skills. He had no understanding literally of what is going to be really asked of him when he gets this child at 8 years old. What is the new directive that he's going to download? What is the standard? What does the family stand for? What are you going to be bringing him for, etc.? This is just a bunch of emotional stuff about who was in control. Okay, and I'm like, the mama definitely doesn't need to really be, petitioning for custody, because as I said, in 1.5 years, that child should basically be moved on to his male self, so that he can basically wind up being in society what we need. Somebody that can sustain and defend what the woman brings forth. So I'm saying that you got to look at all of your issues and get real clear about this, etc. Okay, men, are you able to take care of the children from the point that you should be able to, especially the male children? Women, why are you basically having issues with not relinquishing the children, the male children, to the father? Okay, because you can't make males. We've seen that as a real big problem. We have too many males around that are totally incompetent of being companions to competent women. Okay, but there's a process that they have to go through. I don't understand what it is, and that's not my place, because I'm trying to hold the feminine over here, that they have to go through, and I know I can't do it. So I'm just saying that, in the Imhotep school, the first tier of the pyramid of Imhotep is a square. What does that represent? Because it actually occupies certain dimensions, or should I say directions on the planet, the east, the west, the north, and south, or the cardinal relationships. What are those attributes? What are you being asked to build? The second level, what does that represent? Because in sending the children to this school, this should be clearly defined so that you can understand at what phase these concepts and things that this child is building in his or herself are receiving. Thank you.
I was reading Ebony about a month ago, and basically it was an article, a very interesting article about prostate cancer. And it basically said that in the West, African men are the percentage of African men who contract prostate cancer is more than that of any other men in the world. I just want to know what you think about this and where it comes from and why. And I want you to be able to say what advice you give to every African man here today.
So this is what I call lifestyle support, which I said I don't call psychotherapy because I agree with Dr. Brown here that disease originates in intellectual processes. Okay, so I really practice what's known as mind-body medicine. And if you do not change the state of consciousness of the individual, irregardless of what the present treatment might be for a disease, the individual is not in a position to regenerate new tissue. Got to understand that. So my position is that we deal with the psychological aspect, the intellectual aspect that causes disease. We then decide whatever treatment we want to use on the physical level so that after the healing at stage 1, you can then initiate the stem cells in the body to regrow that tissue back. See, that is bringing a person full 360 degrees, and that is what the true healers in Kemetic times used to do. Okay? Now, prostate disease then, by definition, is the inability of the male to integrate the male and female aspects of himself as he knows himself as a male. Now, why do I say female and male aspects? Because the prostate gland is a vestigial uterus. So you have to understand it's a vestigial uterus. So that, by definition, says that this is a feminine issue in a male that is under siege. So when we are able to help a male understand that he has that dual anatomy, and to come to grips with it, and to decide how he chooses to channel that energy, then the prostate no longer becomes a problem. But as long as men want to talk about the fact that being male is one thing that really does not have any relationship to becoming female, which is obviously a male that has a mother, could not even form his lips to say that the truth, but they still do it, okay, is going to have problems. This is the goal for all of us. This is part of what you're going to be mutating to become androgynous. And that is what marriage is the highest initiation to start the primordial activation of androgyny. So therefore, when men or women, because it's no different than uterine cancer, and black women have real issues in accepting their femininity and the nurturing aspect of that, which is what the uterus does. The uterus is the big cradle of civilization. You have to sit in there as a soul for 9 months to get a body. And then once you are born, that uterus still gives you the knowledge and capacity to sustain that you created, which the African woman has problems with, because her big stuck point is a job. She's so busy with a job, she can't nurture anything. And we have to deal with that. Where we live has no flowers. Everything is twisted to the side, turned inside out, dilapidated. It's not because we're not creative. It's not because we're not exposed to beauty. You got a job. And your job keeps you from expressing yourself because it's something that you don't like. You're doing it for money, and by the time you live that life for 8 to 10 hours a day, you have no energy to beautify where you stay. I mean, it's real clear what the situation is, because we do not believe that doing what we love doing, we can make as much money or more. It's a lack of believing in self. And so when you don't believe in self and you don't believe in nurturing what you create, then the organs that personify that attribute atrophy. It's real clear. So I'm saying here that not until we can have therapists, and it's interesting. That was one of my most frustrating rotations in medicine, is when I had to go through urology. So here I am sticking all these different things down male penises, to get them ready to go for cystoscopies, to look at the prostate, all this stuff. I mean, it was just like bizarre to me. I was like, they have to carry this thing around. You know, I was like, you know, carrying a penis around, what do I know about that? Nothing. Testicles, nothing. You know, and these men are like really dealing with issues in their mind. And I'm supposed to be the doctor that's supposed to have the ends on helping them to understand what their problem is. I'm like, that is the biggest lie. I mean, that's why I say to any male gynecologist, how can you be the authority on my stuff? When have you ever had your first physical menstrual period? When have you ever nursed a baby? When have you ever had any penis in you, in a vagina? None of these things, so how can you be the authority on my stuff? And I say that, I was so frustrated when I was going through urology. Because my thing is, I don't know the social implications of what happens in the male bathroom. I mean, standing to urinate, that's strange to me. You know, having to put it, all of that was very strange, and I felt very inadequate for a real reason. Of course, I knew the technical aspect. Of course, I knew the theory. But what does that have to do with all the social, sexual implications as to why they're really ill when it says right there that disease starts in intellectual processes, half of which I could never know. All I can do is just be a walking book and just, you know, blurt out what they tell me in the book and listen to all the men and try to put together a picture based on all their experiences as to what's going on with you. But my own intuitiveness, etc., no, not this lifetime, I can't do that. So why would I rob you of the high quality care that you should have? Which means that I need not be standing here and somebody else who really wants to be here that has all of the capacity to be here needs to be here. And I need to be where I should be. So you understand what I'm saying? And I'm just saying that, you know, it has to be looked at very clearly. I have met men that are technically very competent as far as gynecology goes. And they have been smart enough that when it comes to treatment and counseling, that they surround themselves completely with women. Okay, so the women do all the counseling, they do all the instruction, etc., which is appropriate. But most male gynecologists are so arrogant that they will not do that, which means that this is why gynecology is the most backwardly practiced specialty of medicine at this point in time, because they are not willing to deal with nutritional issues, all different type of unique therapies, etc., which means that it's very dangerous because they are messing with the gateway to this dimension. Okay? Yes, Sal?
I was to say, the word individual, the inner division, the duality, masculine and feminine, is there. So every time I say I'm an individual, is that's all in there. But we need to know where the origin is. The origin is female, feminine. It's a simple thing. Women with balls. That's a social thing. Because I have big problems, personally, because I know, my friend here, martial artists have been very violent in our formative years as a mode of survival, so we believe. Yeah? I've got a thing in me called beast, which is ready to jump like this. But when I'm confronted with, in a certain way, a mode about, and someone gets in my face, I'm having to go,
Right.
yes? But I meet certain sisters now who got balls. And they want to stand and fight. Now, I keep saying, yeah, I like this case of in martial arts, fighting, you know what I'm saying? I think that everybody should have the ability to defend themselves or whatever. But as a mode of argument, I'd sooner not go there and keep a thing there. But it seems to be this nurturance thing that's coming out in society now, the draping in gold of everything, and it's all like they're going to stand up and we're going to. I've got big difficulties with it. However, Setmet is the lioness. How do
Yeah, but see, I'm under her patronage. You know, she is my aunt that I carry, and see, I'm under her patronage, okay? And as I said, there's the male and female, the yin and yang aspect of everything. And the virility here of vitality, which is the lioness aspect, also has to flow as the god essence of Beth, the cat. Do you understand what I'm saying? And truly carrying this kind of duality, this kind of energy, has been extremely challenging for me to master this lifetime. Because, when segment comes out, if I'm not very clear about the proper circumstances for that, I always finish the circumstance, okay? Which was not the intent, it becomes very destructive. And this is part of what I've had to really recognize and really begun to master what the real feminine essence is about how to channel this vitality. So, this is untamed vitality or untamed energy, literally. And Bess is my best teacher in how to be able, just like you said, to maintain your leads, etc., to how to channel that, how to be able to get done what needs to be done, but be as quiet as a cat and be as gentle as a kitten in being able to get it done. So I'm saying that that's a real big imbalance that the African woman has taken on, partly because of her diet. She eats way too much protein that actually generates way too much male and androgens, okay, that really increase her testosterone level. So that is a hormonal-driven psychology that needs to be corrected. And then secondly, she also comes to the experience without having exemplification of the feminine. How does a woman actually handle the circumstance, etc.? And so I'm saying that this is part of why women coming together again and studying themselves and going within to understand and get the original instruction. And if I may mention, I think Queen Afua is really a quote, queen unquote, in helping women to regain a feminine model for how to handle their problems, especially with her latest book, Sacred Woman. So having done these studies with her and been through the Sacred Woman training, it has been a wealth of information for me to use at my professional level as to how to handle circumstances in a very gentle and very tasteful way that really isn't offensive. Okay, we have to really learn that again. So I hope, you said the lady named Emily, that answered your question, that this is an intellectual imbalance where there's a conflict in understanding the feminine relative to the masculine and how does that play out in the male's life. And so, we need men to be able to counsel men in understanding how to unleash their femininity, okay, and how that looks, etc., and not label themselves as having, sexual identity issues and a lot of other things that we still aren't comfortable with. I do, Dr. Pat Newton talks about the post-traumatic slavery syndrome, and it's a very serious issue that we have to look at as to how much of that, especially for us in America, that we're still carrying. And with the promiscuity that was forced upon African men to breed, okay, with the continuous, rapes and incestual relationships that African American women were forced to have in America, there has to be a whole revamping of the entire structure of sexuality and a whole new standard set. Do you understand that? So there's a lot of things.
If you go into Africa, I'm Igbo, and recently with my research, I've had to go back in history and see how women handle things. And one thing we women seem to forget is not just only the nutritional aspect and the hormonal aspect, which is also very important, but in addition to that, African women seem to take as a standard of emulation European women and what European women have gone through. And that is a big problem, because if you go into like Igbo tradition, for instance, when men went out to war, the person who was the field marshal was a woman. And they went and did the physical battle, she did the spiritual battle. She held a staff called Utata Suuna, which meant that they believed that this was an invisible shield, that by the sheer power of the spirituality of the woman, that woman would protect them in battle. At home, the wives would tune in spiritually to see their men actually overcoming the victims. So there is a way a woman can fight, a way a woman can put forward. But we have to remember that we had a whole system, a whole structure where women did things on their terms. We had businesses, we worked, but we controlled the space in which we worked, which meant that you could raise your family and there would not be a decision between mother and job. But that's one thing we have forgotten and which we need to really go back to.
Let me just comment on that, see, these are the things that I'm talking about that we have to
retrieve again. You know, I had a wonderful story shared with me by a gentleman, and he told me that he used to be in the insurance business. His wife was dead at that time, and he was telling me how much he loved her. And he was saying that, you know, whenever she asked for it, he felt compelled to provide for her. And he said it was very interesting that he had a situation where she was expecting some money or something, and he sold insurance. And so he went to the appointment to sell this job with the insurance, and he was, you know, kind of wheeling around and acting like he didn't want to buy the insurance policy. So he said he just went politely over to the door and locked the door. That was so cute. He said he went to the door and locked the door and told him that, you know, nobody's leaving you today unless I sell this insurance policy, because I'm not going home and tell my wife that I do not have what she wants. And I was like, they worked it out. He said that they worked it out. He said that when they worked it out, he had money and the man had the insurance that he wanted. But he was just saying that it was so important to him because he really cared for his wife and thought that she was that important that he would not allow a circumstance to allow him not to be victorious. And I'm saying that that kind of re-edifies the fact that the woman has this kind of power that she can actually endow in her family, whether it be your child that says that he cannot fail this test, okay, that he knows that he has to do what his mother or parents have told him because of the value, the love, the nurturing, the care that we're able to give, okay? And I'm just saying that that is really how the woman works, is that by the quality of nurturing, the quality of concern and care that she has, and her alignment with the invisible forces that she continuously calls upon to protect the family, to enlighten herself, to protect and guide her children when they're not in her presence, etc., that everybody feels this and reveres this. And when you have a righteous woman like this, no one likes to tell her no. And see, and that is what I find is really virtuous in being a righteous woman, is that when you really stand for the highest and your whole dedication is to bring heaven on earth, perhaps people can't verbalize it in the way that I can, but they sense this goodness that they always want to be in alignment with and oblige. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I have found that, you know, as I've cleaned my act up and have really focused myself, you know, I travel a lot all around the world. I have 4 wonderful children, which they're all grown, etc. But I've never had a day's problem out of them because the agreement was that if I do the work to enlighten other women and their seed, that my seed has to be divinely protected and guided. So that whatever the father is that needs to be present at the moment, or the mother that needs to be present, so that my seed is always kept on track. I demanded of the Creator that that has to be the case if I'm going out here, that it's my destiny this lifetime to look out for the seeds of others. And that commitment, that pact has never been broken because I've kept my side of the bargain. And so I'm saying that you have to understand as women that we have this kind of global hookup, that we don't have to be everything, okay, all of the time, that we have all of these other intercessor areas that will support us if we're able to be righteous and be on point. So what do you mean when you say that?
The vulture is the feminine symbol.
Oh, yes.
It's a spiritual symbol. In Igbo, this is the vulture.
Yeah, you can't kill the vulture.
That's correct.
Let me say the Igbo women fought a war against the English in 1929. They still cannot understand how women in an area 3 times the size of England were able to gather in 3 days and attack the British without a telephone, without fax, without telecommunication. They gathered. And what they said were vultures. You don't kill the tree that bears fruit. So, go ahead.
There's some information that's come out about the bilbo or the bulbo gland concerning how the woman reproduces without a man. Do you know anything about this?
It's called parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis is the term, and women have always been able to produce other women. Okay, but they cannot produce males because we don't carry the Y chromosome. So that occurs at this point in our evolution through cross-fertilization. Okay, but women have always been able to do that. It's called parthenogenesis. And women still to this day suffer from incomplete atrophy of fetuses that spontaneously begin to grow inside of her. And they're known as dermoid cysts. So many times these are still appendages that from the fertilized, or should I say from the ovum, that have double X chromosomes in them that went on to mature into a human being. They just become a tritic, as we call it, or they just die out. So you still have the bones and the hair and the teeth and things like that. So when you do an ultrasound or x-ray, you can see these calcified hard structures. And when you remove that cyst, this is the remnants of the individual that normally would have matured. But see, part of what happened when the religious crusades came in, etc., even before then, when it was felt that the patriarchy was reigned, that right now in the basement of the Vatican, the Barbary libraries, all this kind of information, much of it is still right here, also in England, in the Museum of History, that is still being compensated and kept from women about how they operate, period. So I mean, this is just real old information. And again, as I said, this intellectual decapitation of the woman, but the use of her body to bring forth, all kind of abominations into this dimension is still what we're suffering from.
Would that blow out the old virgin birth concept, because Mary reproduced supposedly without any male presence, but she brought forth a male child?
But what you have to understand still, that what we're still talking about is yin and yang, or electromagnetic, or centripetal, or centrifugal forces. Okay, and now, as I said, I'm not a religious archaeologist or a religious, I don't know if there's a physician that specializes in religious anatomy or whatever. I had to study the Bible to deal with the phenomena that I'm seeking as far as immortality, but those kind of stories to me are still gray, because I let Mother Nature teach me. Okay, right now where I stand is that the latest information I got is that Jesus Christ was a twin. Okay, Thomas was his twin brother, and that he and Thomas were one pregnancy out of 8 others. Okay, that she was sexually active and just a hopeless mother thing. And that his wife, Jesus Christ's wife, Mary Magdalene, was the first female pope of Rome. So I mean, whoa, I can take you on some stuff. I can take you on some stuff. So I am still trying to download what is really happening there. All I know is that, I'm still channeling information out of the Barbary Library in the Vatican. Okay, but my request has always been to just really deal with the issue that I have at hand regarding immortality, because they have one of the greatest libraries on that. And that's what I'm saying, that it's such an awesome situation when you see the Pope every day, hail and have to announce a new frailty, when they actually sit on the 10th plates that were taken out of the temples in Egypt, but they don't have the genetic structure to directly access them. See, we have the genetic structure, and their willingness to be like the plants in the meadows at the foot of the Mount Rainier is how they get the blessing. So they're not willing to relinquish the control yet. Okay. So that's why he every day gets a new fracture and a new infirmity. See, he's catching hell every day because of what he's sitting on, but they don't want to relinquish the control yet of the information. So I'm just saying that, for me, that's great. Do you know, Doc, so she has some, loud information on that? All I know is that, the Virgin Mary, was black. Okay, she was a very heavily melanated black woman, as Jesus Christ was, and the whole line of which now becomes the Templar? The Knights Templar family line. See, the Knights Templar is a family line of that whole descendancy that still right now is being kept underground in Italy somewhere or whatever. But yes, women can reproduce without veils. And you have to understand that when you go to the future, which is our past, is that we never ever reproduced physically from the beginning when we were in our highest energetic states. Is that to reproduce another human being was always a mental projection, that the male and female came together in consciousness the body was immediately constructed and the individual got up and walked
If I
off.
can make a comment, I mean, for me, that's what makes women the god, rather than what's been conceived as God being a male person or a male being. The fact that
So if,
Right.
if I'm a goddess, then anything that comes out of my uterus is a goddess or
a god.
No, sorry, we can't take any more questions now. Because, the restaurant people, they have their set to a very strict time pattern, so we push it a bit. But please, join me in thanking Dr.